There's a really cool book by this science fiction author called Alastair Reynolds, one of my favorite writers, called Century Reign. It's a book where basically the humankind discovers a wormhole and they enter it and they go to basically to the other side of the universe, and they discover that inside this sort of mini Dyson sphere there's another Earth. And this Earth has been stuck in the 1950s. So basically what happened was that Hitler failed the conquest of France, and then history took a different kind of turn. And the reason that's never found out in the book why Hitler had to fail this conquest was that if he had succeeded, we would have discovered the atom bomb, nuclear power, and so forth. And we would have had scientific instruments to figure out that we're living inside a mini Dyson sphere. But now these guys who lived on this double Earth didn't have those instruments. Hence, whenever they looked up at the starry sky, they saw stars just as we do, but they had no way of figuring out that the stars were fake. Oh, sounds pretty Cartesian, right? Now the problem with science is the fact that even though we do have the instruments to figure out that there is no Dyson sphere, circumferring in the Earth, we do not have sufficient instruments, for example, to figure out whether that mini Dyson sphere would actually be a gigantic Dyson sphere encapsulating the entire solar system. We don't have instruments like that. Everything that we use to figure out astronomy, for example, redshifts and so forth, is basically, I mean, it could just as well be that aliens are fooling us, they're pulling our legs. It could be the case. Now this brings us to the very limits of knowledge, which is, I think, the business of science to figure out. I mean, knowledge is the business of science to figure out. Limits of knowledge is the business of us philosophers to figure out. Interestingly enough, I think one of the most sort of useful shorthands for figuring out knowledge was already presented by the antique Greeks, by Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, is this tripartite division of propositions to episteme, doxa, and pistis. So episteme is about these propositions that are true, justified beliefs. Doxastic beliefs are propositional attitudes towards the truth or falsity of certain propositions. And then there's this interesting little thing called pistis, or in English, I think in Finnish it's pretty weird that we don't have this distinction between belief and faith. But with faith, we're doing something completely different that we're doing with episteme and doxa. Now actually, I made this diagram, but I don't know if I have the time to share this with you, but I might try. This is a bit because, like, you know, when you mentioned this, like, sort of evidentialism versus fideism or Wittgensteinianism, I'm kind of a, like, you know, banner-bearing Wittgensteinian philosopher. I actually even did my master's thesis in Wittgenstein.